The other day, Ben & Jerry's ice cream says, we will end sales of our ice cream in the occupied Palestinian territory. The first time I encountered BDS, the BDS movement against Israel, was in college, and these people protested because SodaStream, which was an Israeli company, was used in the dining halls. So we had to eliminate all the soda streams in dining halls because it was an Israeli company. I said, give me a break. Cherise Trump is here. Wrote a wonderful article about this the other day, and the latest with the BDS support across the country. Cherise Trump, how are you, ma'am?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
And real quick before you do that, the last name, it's had to have been annoying these last 4 years, isn't it?
Yeah. There's no relation that we know of, at least.
I know. Now, but like, have you always had to say no relation, or has that just been the last 4 years now? It's Cherise Trump, no relation.
Well, we really haven't had to explain it so much in the past.
Okay, yeah, that's a bummer. All right, what is BDS?
So BDS is a movement run by Palestinians for Justice for Palestine. It is a boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israeli companies or companies that operate in Israel. And we've been seeing primarily this kind of started in the early 2000s, and we've been seeing this kind of take off on college campuses because it's just, college campuses are ripe for any kind of like social justice movement or any kind of where students want to compel others to participate in certain movements. That's usually what's going to happen on campuses. And so BDS movement has been around, like I said, since the early 2000s, and it's kind of springs up again every time with a lot of momentum whenever there's an issue where Israel has to defend itself against Hamas or the Palestinians. So this is just kind of what we're seeing again on college campuses where students are now trying to compel certain behavior and support for the BDS movement. And administrators really aren't stepping in to stop this. I mean, this is compelled support and viewpoint discrimination against Jewish clubs and organizations on campus. And I can go more into kind of some of the totalitarian behavior that we're seeing out of the students.
I definitely want to hear that. I just want to make the obvious point here, get it out of the way, is that with what's going on in Cuba right now, Black Lives Matter and some other groups have come out, and the first thing they say is how horrible it is that we have these sanctions against Cuba and we're impoverishing the people and blah, blah, blah. Yet here, I guarantee you, those same people also support BDS in Israel. Tell us about what they're doing in practice.
Yeah, so we've seen a number of times now where you have universities like Pomona College is a really good example. It was just this last April where student government associations are attempting to withhold funding from clubs on campus, from all clubs, unless they support certain movements. And this one, and Pomona was the BDS movement. And so they passed the resolution, but there was so much controversy around it that they were forced to table it. And then after that, they ended up having to deal with, getting diverse viewpoints and ideas presented in order for them to pass it. And it therefore didn't pass. It was tabled permanently, and they had to change the wording to have it so that only the student government essentially was going to participate in the BDS movement, and that they couldn't compel the clubs to do this. Like I said, this is active, compelled support and viewpoint discrimination. If you were a Jewish club on campus and this resolution was actually passed with the original wording, those students, all the students and all the clubs, in order to receive funding, which all students pay into, by the way, because it's their student activity fees that is looped into your tuition fees. So all of those fees that are supposed to help clubs on campus and support them so they can do fundraisers and events, those all would have been under scrutiny, and everyone would have had to prove that they were supporting the BDS movement by making sure they weren't buying from any companies on this long, tedious, evolving list of thousands and thousands of companies on the BDS website, including companies such as HP, which we know that most universities use their computer systems are HP, or any kind of tech on campus is most likely HP.
What's HP's connection to Israel? They're not an Israeli company.
It's any company that's essential. It doesn't have to be an Israeli company. So BDS movement, this is why the list is so long, because it's any company that actively it supports the Israeli government or is used by the Israeli government or is somehow tied to Israel. So it doesn't even have to be,
Yeah, just to drive this point home for everyone, because a couple years ago, if we were having this conversation, Cherise, I would have said, oh, those college kids, they're crazy and they do crazy things, but it's, Pomona College, it'll stay on Pomona College. Nah, those days are over. We have seen already how these ideas don't just leak out of college campuses, but pour out of college campuses into the rest of the society. And when these kids grow up, we always thought that they would get smacked around and start acting normal again, but no, they start dictating. Do you see this when they graduate, 5 years down the road or whatever? Do you see this happening nationwide outside of college campuses?
Yeah, this should be something we're paying very close attention to, because college campuses are essentially the training grounds for future leaders. And we're seeing what would be potential future leaders come out with very totalitarian penchants. Their behavior is, rather than debating each other and trying to, participate in open dialogue, they'd rather just shut it down to begin with, and not even try to entertain the idea of opposing views. So this is very disconcerting when you think about the type of leaders, future business leaders, future government leaders coming out of these campuses, and their first step is to just force people to agree with their ideology.
Wow, that was deep and insightful. I want more of that. Like, subscribe, get more.